Tom Jones performed in Las Vegas in 1975 while dressed in a new attire and sang a song that no one knew. Next, everyone was taken aback by what transpired. The audience began to boo. It was a drinking incident. People left in droves. At the chance of go home from the irate throng, security had to remove him. Tom was devastated that he sat out for 6 months following the performance. But you know what's worse? It wasn't even his singing that made them loathe him. He concealed a far deeper secret for 48 years. The little settlement of Treforest, close to Pontypridd in South Wales, was the site of Tom Jones's birth on June 7, 1940. His mother ran the household, while his father, like many males in their town, toiled underground as a coal miner. Everyone was close-knit, yet life was challenging. Tom appeared to have inherited the musical heritage of his family, even as a young youngster. Even though Tom's dad always thought he'd be a miner like him, things didn't work out that way. A turning point occurred when I was 12 years old. A devastating disease at the time, TB, struck Tom. For 2 long years, he was confined to his bed, unable to play outside or lead a typical childhood. It was the darkest period of his life, he claimed afterwards. However, in that alone bedroom, a different seed began to germinate. His devotion to music. Since he was bored and had nothing better to do, he tuned into the radio repeatedly. Little Richard and Elvis Presley were among the American rock and roll and blues musicians whose music he heard. He was captivated by their music. He began to sense the melodies he would compose and perform himself. Tom was already making a name for himself at school, his voice even though he wasn't enthusiastic about classes or athletics when he returned. He was told to calm down by his teachers, since he sang so passionately and loudly during assemblies. His music instructor went so far as to question his motivation for performing the Lord's Prayer in a gospel style. He was obviously doing something daring and unique, and people took note. He was determined to follow his long simmering dream, so he dropped out of school permanently when he was 16 years old. Tom Jones wed Linda Trenchard, his high school sweetheart, in March 1957. At the tender age of 16, they were already expecting a son, Mark. However, their love affair began much earlier than that. Tom fell head over heels for Linda the moment they met when they were both 8 years old. She finally consented to go out with him when she was 15 years old after he pursued her for years. Their union lasted for nearly 60 years, until Linda passed away in 2016. At 75 years old, she had fought cancer 3 times. They stuck together through thick and thin. Nonetheless, Tom was forthright about his infidelity while he was famous. He confessed to having sexual relations with hundreds of women annually while touring during the peak of his fame. He denied ever bringing up the affairs in an interview. Linda kept her distance from him. He made it clear that he and his wife both adore their marriage. When Tom joined the Welsh beat group Tommy Scott and the Senators in 1963 as lead singer, it was the beginning of his musical career. The band needed a new vocalist after their original member left, so they approached him with an offer. After seeing Tom play at a local watering hole, the bass player extended an invitation for him to join. For a couple of pounds and a few beers, Tom was on board. From humble beginnings, they played working-class venues all around South Wales. They had 2 locals managing them and collaborated with the renowned Joe Meek, but their efforts were in vain. Disappointed, they went back to Wales. Next, the pivotal moment arrived. Gordon Mills, a manager from South Wales, first noticed Tom's talent after seeing him play at a bar one night. In honor of the popular film of the same name, he whisked Tom away to London and rechristened him Tom Jones. In addition to rebranding themselves as the Playboys, the band also underwent a name change from the Senators to the Squires in due time. Mills fired bass player Vernon Hopkins in 1969 after a falling out with Hopkins, who had been Tom's confidant for years. Life in London was tough at the beginning. Tom and the band squeezed into a dilapidated flat in Notting Hill, living off of scraps. They devised a last-ditch strategy to acquire food at one point. A restaurant was located where they were able to use a restroom window large enough to escape through. After finishing their meal, they would stealthily exit by the rear and flee. Tom considered suicide when things were so horrible. However, he persisted. Years down the road, his net worth would exceed $250 million. However, the hardship was tangible at the time, and it molded him. A previously unpublicized aspect of Tom's early career was discussed in 2017. During the height of the Harvey Weinstein affair, Tom revealed that sexual harassment was an issue in the music industry as well, affecting all sexes. At one point in his career, he acknowledged in an interview that someone had attempted to have sexual relations with him. He assured me it wasn't horrible. He simply stated someone had attempted to pull me, and I politely declined. Vernon, a former bandmate of his, once recounted a terrible incident involving producer Joe Meek, though he refrained from naming names. Tom allegedly sprinted out of Meek's apartment once, while yelling that someone had touched him, as recounted by Vernon. Even though Tom felt bad about what happened, he decided to simply walk away and not interact with that individual again. Gordon Mills entered a modest Welsh nightclub in 1964. He was only a lyricist who had a few successes. He wasn't really a household name. However, something extraordinary happened that night. With his band, the Senators, on stage was a youthful Welsh singer called Thomas Jones Woodward, going by the stage name Tommy Scott. The 24-year-old's powerful singing style struck Mills. He lacked cohesion. Nevertheless, he has an irresistible charm. Mills immediately had an idea. He persuaded the adolescent idol to change his name to Tom Jones, ditch his tuxedo, and abandon his image as a teen club performer. The man looked great with the name, which was taken from a famous movie. The reactions of the elderly women to Jones were also noted by Mills. It wasn't simply the music that they enjoyed. They yearned for his proximity. A big component of Tom Jones' reputation would be his sex appeal. Mills quickly secured a recording contract with Decca Records for him. Chills and Fever, Jones's debut single, was released in August 1964. There ought to have been a major event, but there wasn't. There was a lot of chaos while taping. Some versions that Joe Meek, the original producer, developed but never released, never made it out. The label brought in studio musicians to remedy what they thought the band couldn't pull off when Jones ultimately recorded the official version. The last song had a lot of intensity and was quite loud, but it fell flat. Some thought it was overly polished. Even worse, the song failed to generate any chart-topping interest. It appeared for a brief second that Tom Jones might not even get off the ground. Nevertheless, its not unusual followed. Nothing remained the same after this second single. At first, he wasn't even intended to hear the song that Mills and Liz Reed had written. Sandy Shaw, who was a rising celebrity at the time, was offered it. However, she had faith in Jones' abilities and offered him the opportunity to record it instead. It had a lot of personality, brazen, energetic, and memorable. It was rejected by the BBC. They found Jones's voice to be overly attractive. However, it was played continuously on a pirate radio station called Radio Caroline. That dangerous exposure paid off. The music went boom. A month after its debut in March 1965, It's Not Unusual reached #1 in the UK. Upon its April US release, it quickly rose to #10 on Billboard. Tom Jones went from